In this video, I want to show you an example of how to approach a simpler problem than what you have in Project 1, but a problem that's kind of similar to what you have in Project 1. So here are the rules that they have here. So jumping gives you 1 hidden per minute, unless there was a non-rest activity less than an hour ago, in which case it gives 0 hedons per minute. Swimming always gives 2 hedons per minute. So here's how I would approach this. I would say, okay, so what do I need to know in order to figure out how many hedons to give? So here perform activity also takes duration. Well, what I need to know is when did the last non-rest activity finish, and I also need to know what is the time now. If I know the answer to those questions, then I can figure out how many hedons to give. So how would I know the answer to those questions? Well, they've got to be stored in some kind of global variables. So let's do that. So I need to know what the current time is. And I also need to know when the last non-rest activity finished. So let's call it last non-rest finish. And if I know those things, it seems like I should know what to do. So okay, so initially I want current time to be 0, and last non-rest finish, well, it's best if it's smaller than -60 so that I don't have any problems. So I'll just set it to -100. So keep in mind that here I had to say that current time and also last non-rest finish, they both are global so that I can access them in perform activity. What's another thing that I need to keep track? Well, this is stuff that I need to know in order to know how much to add. Now, I also need to know how many hedons I have now. So I also need to know how many hedons do I have now. So let's add a variable like that. That would be current hedons, like that. So now that we have everything, I can write my perform activity function in order to update the current hedons. Of course, initially current hedons should also be 0. So I need to add different amounts of hedons depending on the activity. So I can say if activity is equal to jumping, what is it here? So it says gives 1 hedon per minute unless there was a non-rest activity less than an hour ago. So how do I figure that one out? I say, okay, so I know the last non-rest finish and I know the current time. And if the current time minus last non-rest finish is greater or equal than 60, so I'm assuming that those are minutes the same way that I assumed that in Project 1. So this is in minutes and this is also in minutes. And if it is different, is greater or equal than 60, well, I need to add 1 hedon per minute, and this is the number of minutes that they have in total. So I need to say current hedons plus equals duration times 1. So since here I'm saying current hedons plus equals duration times 1, well, like the times 1 doesn't do anything, but I'll keep it just for clarity's sake. The important thing is to remember that if I'm saying current hedons plus equals, that's the same as saying current hedons equals current hedons plus whatever. That's the same, and that means that I'm already referencing this. And this is a global variable, so I got to declare it as global. So I'll say that. And here I'm saying current hedons plus equals duration. Great. If activity is not jumping, if activity is something else, so what is it here? Swimming. then unconditionally I should add duration times 2 to current heathens. So that's that. And this covers all the cases. What else should I do? Well, I have those variables which should be updated every time. So how can I do that? So first of all, if they should be updated, current time and last non-rest finish, then they should be declared as global. So this would be current time, and this would be last non-rest finish. Now, I've been designing it like that because I said, oh, I'm using current heathens, so now I should declare it as global. It's probably better practice to actually have the global variables be in the same order, just for consistency's sake. So, okay, how do I update this guy? Well, so whether it's jumping or whether it's swimming, last non-rest finish should be updated. It should be updated after I check whether current time minus last non-rest finish is greater or equal than 60. So what's the last non-rest finish now? Well, it should be current time plus duration. Similarly, over here I should say last non-rest finish equals current time plus duration. So that's the finish time for jumping or for swimming. Now, if the activity is resting, then I shouldn't update last non-rest finish, that stays the same, but I should update current time. So current time should be updated regardless of anything, and the way to update it is to say current time plus equals duration. So this is the very simple example of how I would write a program that just follows those rules. Now, you have helper functions at project 1, and the reason you have the helper functions is that it's easier for you to use those helper functions because the rules are more complicated there. What kind of test cases should I have for those rules? Well, it makes sense to just say, okay, does jumping give 1 heathen per minute if there was no non-rest activity for more than an hour? And I would definitely check that. What's another question to ask? Another question, is it gonna give 1 heathen per minute if there is non-rest activity for exactly an hour? That's the kind of thing that makes sense to check. And it should give, because here it says less than an hour ago. So here, if it's exactly an hour, then you should give 1 heathen a minute. This is the kind of thing where it's very easy to make a mistake, so it makes sense to check this kind of thing. What else should you check? Well, does swimming give 2 heathens an hour? A minute, sorry. What would you check here? Well, maybe you made a mistake, and maybe swimming works the same as jumping. So it does make sense to check if you rested for less than an hour, or more than an hour, just to make sure that you didn't make a mistake and the function doesn't actually behave the same way for swimming and for jumping in this respect, that it doesn't ever say that swimming gives you 0 heathens per minute. Those are not necessarily exhaustive, but those are the things that you would look for. Of course, you need to actually write those tests in the main block and actually run them, as well as say something like this.